Good morning, everyone. My name is Jim Schoaf. I'm a senior associate here at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and thank you for coming out today in the rain to our event on Japan-North Korea relations. I have an old adage, I guess not that old, but I've come to believe that there is never a bad time to hold an event on North Korea. When we began thinking about holding this event, and I contacted Professor Nishino here early in September about, I'd really like to get you over here to Washington to talk about this issue. We expected very soon that there might be an early report from North Korea on the progress of the Japan-North Korea relations initiative. And can you get here? How early can you get here? And we had to move the event back later into October because, as it turned out, Professor Nishino had a trip to Pyongyang planned, and that was the earliest he could get here. So reluctantly, I said, okay, let's go with that. Sure enough, everything gets delayed in terms of the reporting between Japan and North Korea. We have Kim Jong-un mysteriously disappearing for a while to give us a little extra intrigue and drama. The visit of Hwang Pyong-so, the number 2 in North Korea, down to Seoul, and a kind of an initiation of North-South discussions going on. And now, starting next week on Monday, a delegation from Japan will visit Pyongyang to talk specifically about this very issue. So there's never a bad time to talk about North Korea. And today we will focus a little bit on Japan-North Korea relations and the recent initiative. The title we came up with, Japan-North Korea Rapprochement, Dare to Dream, or Doomed to Fail. Actually, yesterday in a separate session, somebody suggested that it probably should be Doomed to Dream, as this has been a long-running attempt throughout post-war history of Japan and North Korea trying to see if they can to get over and somehow normalize their relationship. So we will talk about Japan-North Korea relations, but also I think about its impact, this initiative's impact on alliance policy coordination, trilateral coordination, and also get into a little bit of Japan, ROK, Republic of Korea ties as well, because it's all interconnected. So thanks for joining us. We are very pleased to welcome Professor Junya Nishino from the Keio University. He's an associate professor there in the Faculty of Law, Department of Political Science, where he did part of his graduate work before earning his PhD from Yonsei University. And his research and teaching focuses on contemporary Korean politics, Japan-Korea relations, and regional diplomacy. And for about 2 of his 7 years living in Korea, he was also special assistant at the Japanese embassy in Seoul, working on policy issues there. He's also spent a year here in Washington relatively recently as a visiting scholar at the Woodrow Wilson Center and George Washington University, and had spent a year as an exchange scholar at the Harvard Yenching Institute in Cambridge. So Professor Nishino will start us off with his opening remarks, and then I'm also very pleased to have Scott Snyder here with us from the Council on Foreign Relations. Scott is a senior fellow for Korea Studies and director of the program on U.S.-Korea policy there. And prior to joining the Council, he was senior associate at the Asia Foundation and founder director of the Center for U.S.-Korea policy there. And I think you were also a little bit at Yonsei University.
Yeah, I was there for a year.
Yeah.
But more importantly, I worked in this building previously. So.
That's true, at
Yeah.
the Asia Foundation. I have a lot of respect for Scott, and we collaborated together on one of his many publications on South Korea, the U.S.-South Korea Alliance, meeting new security challenges a couple of years ago, and really glad to add his voice to this discussion today. So with those introductions, let me turn to Nishino-sensei for your opening remarks, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw, for your your invitation and the kind introduction. It's my pleasure and honor to have an opportunity to to give my view on Japan-North Korea relation today, not our local relation, Japan-North Korea relations, which have been experiencing difficult time due to mainly due to the abduction issue since 2002. But as you know, recently we have active negotiation or dialogue between Tokyo and Pyongyang to improve the relationship. We will give a brief on recent development about 15 or 20 minutes, and I appreciate a lively discussion with you. As you know, Japan and North Korea reached an agreement in Copenhagen in May 29th that North Korea conduct a comprehensive and full-scale investigation on Japanese nationals in North Korea, including the case of its abduction of the Japanese national in the 1970s and the 1980s, in exchange for Japan's lifting of some economic sanctions. So during the bilateral meeting in Beijing in July 1st, North Korea explained about the organization, composition, and the person in charge of its Special Investigation Committee. According to North Korea's explanation on this Special Investigation Committee, it has 4 subcommittees. For number 1, Japanese officially recognized abducted to North Korea. This is the abduction issue. And number 2, others who may have been abducted. And number 3, it also includes Japanese women who went to North Korea as wives of Koreans, mainly in 1950s to 80s. And finally, number 4, remains of Japanese who died in North Korea around the end of the World War II. So now we can recognize that Pyongyang tries to diversify the issue, abduction issue. But meanwhile, as you know, Tokyo always wants Pyongyang to prioritize 12 Japanese abductees. So obviously, Yokota Megumi-san case is one of the most important cases in Japan. After the meeting in Beijing, the Japanese government officially decided to lift some bans on money restriction and travel, and to allow ships from North Korea to enter Japanese port for humanitarian purposes. The Prime Minister Abe told reporters on the investigation committee, quote, "We have concluded that an unprecedented scheme that can make national decisions has been established. In accordance with the principle of action for action, we will lift some of the measures taken by Japan." Then Japanese government lifted some of sanctions, economic sanctions against North Korea. However, there's been concern inside Japan that it's too early to lift part of Japanese unilateral sanction imposed on North Korea, because many Japanese don't believe that North Korea submits a satisfiable report on the whereabouts and the fate of all of the abducted Japanese nationals. But at the same time, there's been a growing expectation that North Korea may show a sincere attitude this time, because Prime Minister Abe himself expressed his strong will to make a progress in the negotiation with the North. But as you know, North Korea failed to submit its initial report last month in September, saying that we aim to complete the investigation about a year, and we now in the initial stage. As of now, we cannot provide an explanation beyond this stage. The North Korea had previously said its initial report would be delivered from late summer to early autumn of this year, after the detail of the investigation was settled in July. But after saying that the investigation was just beginning and that only initial findings could be provided, North Korean negotiator proposed that Japanese officials visit Pyongyang and see for themselves what progress had been made at this point. So Prime Minister Abe finally decided on Monday this week to send the Japanese officials to North Korea to confirm the status of North Korea's re-investigation into the abduction of Japanese. About 10 officials, include Mr. Ihara Junichi, Director General of the Foreign Affairs of Japan, will visit Pyongyang from 27th to 30th of this month, next week. But families of the abductee doubt this move will produce result. So Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga, said at the news conference this week, from the viewpoint of moving the re-investigation forward, the officials will directly emphasize to responsible person on North Korea's Special Investigation Committee that the Japanese government is putting top priority on the abduction issue. And he said, quote, we concluded that it's significant to elicit as much detailed information as possible about the current status of the re-investigation. So, however, still, the Japanese Association of the Families of the Abductee is very skeptical about the plan to send officials at this point, saying the government is letting North Korea dictate the pace. And the association's chairman, Mr. Izuka, criticized the planned visit as premature, saying that North Korea has betrayed our expectation so many times. The planned visit is unlikely to bear tangible result. So now Prime Minister Abe facing difficulty not only in the negotiation with the North, but also in the domestic front, domestic politics. So then, why Abe cabinet or Prime Minister Abe is trying to make progress in the relationship with North at this point? I'm not sure. I have no confidence. I have no evidence. But we could think two things or 2 points. One is consideration on domestic politics, and another is international environment surrounding Japan. So some observers suggest that Prime Minister Abe is trying to capitalize on this opportunity to keep or reboost his popularity in Japan. I'm not sure, but if you see the timing, for example, July 1st, Japan and North Korea finally agreed re-establishment of investigation committee, and our government decided to lift sanction. But at the same time, actually, Abe cabinet decided to reinterpret Japan's collective self-defense. And now, so Abenomics is facing sort of difficulties, but he have to decide whether consumption tax will raise more or not. So now very recently he is now facing more difficulties because two ministers stepped down this Monday. So these, some observers suggest that to make a breakthrough or to reboost his popularity, Abe is trying to utilize negotiation with the North. So on the other hand, I would say Prime Minister Abe tried to create a kind of diplomatic room by conduct a new initiative or proactive initiative. So now, as you know, we Japan have a serious confrontation with China surround Senkaku, and also we have difficulties with South Korea at this moment, very regrettably. So now Prime Minister Abe tried to change the kind of structure to utilize the negotiation with the North. And at the same time, from my point of view, Abe really achieved new Japanese, what can I say? What should I say? New Japanese diplomacy, create a new Japanese diplomacy by achieving two important Japanese diplomatic goals. One is reopen normalization, diplomatic relation with North Korea, and another is conclude the peace treaty with Russia. This is a very important Japanese diplomatic goal after the World War II, but yet to reach, yet to achieve these two goals. So Abe is now enthusiastically to try to achieve this diplomatic goal. So then, what is the motivation from North Korea's perspective? North Korea's motivation. I would say, actually, I visited Pyongyang 2 weeks ago, and I felt that North Korea is really trying to diversify its economic relationship with mainly because due to current difficult relationship with China, and stuck relationship with South Korea and the United States. So from North Korea's perspective, it's very good opportunity to have to reopen the dialogue with Prime Minister Abe, because they have a feeling, not only them but also us, have a feeling that Prime Minister Abe keep his power for 2 or 3 more years. Then North Korea think Abe is a kind of reliable negotiation partner. And another reason, another motivation for North Korea is that negotiation with Japan is a kind of clue to reopen or improve the relationship, ultimately with the United States, but at this point, with South Korea. So now North Korea try to reopen the dialogue with South Korea by sending a very high official, Han Byung-so, Choi Ryong-hae, and Kim Yang-gong to the closing ceremony of the Asian Game at the beginning of this month. So if Tokyo is just a clue to change the structure, change the international relations surrounding North Korea, then we have to think whether North Korea still have a motivation to continue a dialogue with Japan. I'm not sure at this point. Finally, what's the implication to the international cooperation in North Korean issue, especially a nuclear issue or North Korean human rights issue? If my memory is correct, just after Copenhagen Agreement, Mr. Glenn Davis and Mr. Hwan Jung-guk, both chief negotiators of six-party talks, expressed concern that Japan itself tried to improve ties with the North without close consultation with the United States and South Korea. It might give some negative impact to trilateral cooperation or coordination a couple of months ago. I mean, just after the Copenhagen Agreement. But now, I don't have this kind of concern because, as you know, this week, National Security Advisor Yachi visited Seoul and had a meeting with National Security Advisor Kim Gang-jin of South Korea and other important figures such as Yoon Byung-se and maybe Byung-gi. And we had Japan and South Korea had a strategic dialogue at the vice minister level at the beginning of this month. Vice Foreign Minister Saeki and Vice Foreign Minister, I cannot remember the name. Cho Tae-yong, yes. Yeah, Cho Tae-yong visited Tokyo, and they had a strategic dialogue at the beginning of this month. So now we are seeing gradual recovering of our diplomatic ties between Japan and Seoul. But yes, I know we have a still great obstacle at the summit level, the comportment issue. But as to trilateral coordination or bilateral coordination among the U.S., Japan, and South Korea, now I don't have any concern about the struggle in dealing with North Korea. Yes, I'll stop it. I appreciate your comment or question and Scott's comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nishino-sensei. I appreciate that. That's a great overview and helping us to understand what's been going on, but also the view from Tokyo and then your thoughts about some of Pyongyang's motivations as well. I definitely want to get to a couple of key questions from a U.S. perspective, I think, which some of them address this issue of policy coordination. Also, the idea of, I think it's more likely that this initiative fails to accomplish what it is set out to accomplish, which is an incremental process of resolving the abduction issue and all issues related to Japanese nationals, and an improvement of Japan-North Korea relations, maybe even toward normalization. Chances are it doesn't get there, and then the question also is what does that mean for the United States and also for our policy coordination. But to help us move a little bit further down this road in analysis, and then I'll open a dialogue up here, and then we'll open up to the audience. I'd like to turn to Scott for some discussing comments.
Yeah, well, Jim, thank you very much for the invitation. It's my pleasure to share the stage with Nishino-sensei. I know that he's really one of the top Korea specialists in Japan, and I always learn from him when I have a chance to see him, and especially since he's just back from North Korea. And I think that offers a lot of fresh perspective. Since I knew that he would cover the Japan-DPRK interaction in relative detail, what I thought I would do is just try to back up and make some observations about the relationship between engagement with North Korea and the trilateral U.S.-Japan-South Korea relationship. Because I think that that interaction is there. It obviously contributes a context, but my own feeling is that maybe we really haven't delved sufficiently into understanding how that trilateral context has fluctuated and what we can learn from that. In reflecting on the developments in the trilateral relationship over the course of the past 2 decades, I've got actually 8 phases. I hope that's not too many. But what I think that I can show through kind of giving a summary review of those 8 phases is just how complicated the diplomacy in the region related to North Korea has been. One of the past individuals who was involved with negotiating in 6-party talks talked about the North Korea problem as a kind of Rubik's Cube. And I guess if you're in 6-party talks, a 6-sided analogy makes sense. But I think that maybe what we can learn from this focusing on this trilateral interaction is that it's almost more like a kaleidoscope. And so, if we go back to the early 1990s, it was really interesting because I think a first phase in this trilateral dynamic was shown in the Shin Kanemaru visit to Pyongyang, which drew a lot of concern from South Korea at that time that Japan was going to move too fast with North Korea, really back during the first North Korean nuclear crisis. And of course, at that time, I think that visit also showed that in the early 90s that Japan had a certain kind of expectation related to what could be potentially gained from normalization with North Korea. In many respects, the Kanemaru visit, I think, was more along the lines of the way that political relations between Japan and China helped open up that relationship. And so maybe Kanemaru was expecting to be a part of similar gains as part of opening the door to North Korea. But of course, the first nuclear crisis kind of took over that phase fairly quickly. And then we moved into a second phase, which is really the first nuclear crisis itself, and the tensions that resulted from concerns about North Korea trying to reprocess. I think that what we see in the U.S.-Japan-South Korea relationship at that time was that actually it was not a triangle, it was an angle. We had a U.S.-Japan alliance and a U.S.-Korea alliance, and especially on the military security side, the big takeaway from tensions in the mid-90s was the absence of much Japan-ROK security interaction. And in fact, I think it's pretty clear one of the things that was stimulated by that phase was the beginnings of a set of working relationships on the security side between Japan and South Korea. Then if we move to the late 90s, we had TCOG, Trilateral Coordination and Oversight Group, and the Perry process. And this was really a high point, I think, in the institutionalization of Japan, U.S., South Korea coordination. From a policy perspective, it was the first time that we had all parties kind of in harness, trying to pull in the same direction. I think the expectation was that coordination was also going to help in terms of bringing along cooperation from China and Russia. And maybe most significantly, the North Koreans didn't like it. They complained about U.S., Japan, South Korea coordination vociferously at that particular time. As we move forward, we get into the 6-party talks. This was a different framework because it meant that there was a broader framework outside of the more narrow or smaller U.S., Japan, South Korea framework. And frankly, I think that what we discovered in that phase was more of a deterioration in the Japan-ROK relationship that kind of inhibited a strong trilateral coordination base within the context of 6-party talks. And then, and also the 6-party talks meant that, unlike in TCOG, where the focus was on the allies, the question of what China was going to do as host became a focus, I think, for the U.S. As it tried to manage the process. And so that had, I think, some ramifications as well. Then we have the, I think, phase with Koizumi's visit to Pyongyang and Japan active engagement with DPRK. Actually, a lot of resonance with the current situation. If you go back and read some of the accounts from that time, it's very interesting that actually even the Koizumi visit, in the context of a good U.S.-Japan relationship, was actually, in a way, a product of a more autonomous approach by Japan, or at least a situation where, even despite a good U.S.-Japan relationship, not everything was coordinated and not everything was shared in advance. It's important, as we go back and look at that particular period, to recognize that actually originally the famed Kelly visit to Pyongyang, where the agreed framework began to unravel, was supposed to take place in June. And it got delayed, and so the Koizumi visit actually came first before the public unraveling of the agreed framework. And so that might have created a lot of differences. I think that the Koizumi engagement also revealed Japan-South Korea frictions to a certain extent. And it also raised the question of whether priorities were out of sync in the trilateral coordination process as Japan began to focus more on abduction, whereas the others were focused on denuclearization. And then, of course, phase 6, late 2000s, we had Bush administration engagement with North Korea. Maybe all I need to say about that period is Chris Hill's nickname in Tokyo, which was Kim Jong-il. In other words, a lot of distrust in Japan about U.S. forward-leaning engagement with North Korea and the implications of that. And then I think we move back in phase 7 to post-North Korean provocations, a U.S.-Japan ROK coordination framework and a trilateral ministerial statement, which I think is another high point in U.S.-Japan-South Korea coordination, where everybody was really in line. And I think this phase right now with Abe's engagement is phase 8, and really is very much, I think, similar to the Koizumi period in terms of the structure. And we can get into some of the details of that. But, having laid out those phases, what is the upshot in terms of implications, in particular of this phase, Japan, with Japan DPRK engagement? How do the U.S. and South Korea look at that? And I think that the upshot for the U.S. is that they recognize, based on the past experience and the fact that there is a U.S.-Japan-South Korea coordination framework, that there is a structural constraint to how far Japan can go, actually. Just like there was for Koizumi, I think to a certain extent in 2002, 2003, 2004, the U.S. also tried to build in and use trilateral coordination as a way of making sure that Japan didn't neglect the denuclearization issue in the course of trying to address the abduction issue. Second, my impression is that there's a fair amount of skepticism within the U.S. government about whether or not Japan DPRK engagement can succeed. And so as a result, some of those people don't worry so much about it. But then, I think that there's a third view that this could be good if it actually helped to satisfy some of the abduction concerns, because that could help bring Japan back into focus with the others in terms of addressing denuclearization. On the South Korean side, I think given the sensitivities in the Japan-South Korea relationship, this is a kind of, it is a potential source of irritation, but at the same time, it does provide a basis and rationale for continued coordination. And so I think that this sort of phase has a very mixed effect in terms of Japan-South Korea relations. And then also, anytime that there's Japan engagement of this sort, what we saw this summer, right after July 1st, was actually a chorus of Korean media. Well, look what Japan's doing with North Korea. Where is our channel? Right? So there is a spillover. And I would actually argue that the focus on abductions, interestingly, has also had a benefit in terms of raising the profile of the South Korean abduction issue, which, as we all know, is certainly as significant in terms of numbers. Depending on how you define the scope of the Japanese abduction issue, it's either greater or less. So I think all those issues are kind of in play. I'll just conclude on one additional set of observations, and that is, Nishino-san asked about, well, what is the North Korean motivation for engaging with Japan? And I would actually argue that this is the most interesting question. What does this look like from the North Korean side? Because under Kim Jong-un, I think that what we have seen is actually initially a period of quiet. Now we see, I think, a full-scale diplomatic effort to diversify its relations with Japan, with the outreach to Japan potentially being the most strategically interesting component of that outreach. And we'll have to wait and see. We really don't know what the metrics are for North Korea in terms of success or failure. And so I think that it becomes hard to assess, but I expect that in the coming week or so, there's a lot that we'll be able to learn with the Japanese visit. And just one additional point. How North Korea deals with Japan has always been interesting in terms of channels. And so, again, I think the Japan-DPRK interaction provides an opportunity to learn a little bit more about North Korean leadership and structure in terms of especially counterparts and interactions that we often don't see in the inter-Korean or U.S. DPRK channels. So let me stop there.
Thanks a lot, Scott. That's a very helpful background and then some interesting points and insights on a couple of the questions that I want to get to. Let me start by asking a couple questions on a couple of key themes and then open it up to the group, because you point out, Scott, this issue of there are two calculations to be made now. They've entered into this written agreement and they're trying to carry out and implement this written agreement between Japan and North Korea. Each one will have to decide at what point, how do they define success, and what is enough success to either keep going or to declare it victory and move on to the next step, or at what point do they say, I've had enough, this is not working, and walk away, and who goes first, etc. An interesting aspect to that, I think, is if you look at the agreement that they wrote together, and Japan was quite proud, I think deservedly so, when they concluded this agreement with North Korea in May, that they actually got it in writing, which was something that North Korea doesn't always do, and the U.S. was not able to do it in the Leap Day deal of 2010. 2012, thereabouts. But as usual, when you do an agreement with North Korea, it's always written in a way that I think gives them a lot of flexibility and refers to this widening of the issue that Nishino-sensei talked about. In the section on the investigation, it says, quote, "The North Korean side appreciated that Japan recognized the efforts made by North Korea on the abductions issue, and North Korea, despite its previous position on this matter, expressed its intention to conduct comprehensive and full-scale investigations on all Japanese nationals and to eventually resolve all issues related to the Japanese nationals." So the paragraph starts out referencing the abduction issue and then pivots over to just all Japanese nationals. So North Korea has an opportunity, if it chooses. I don't think this is clearly how Japan interpreted what they agreed to, but they could say, well, the abduction issue, as we've said all along, was always resolved, but we've magnanimously agreed to investigate all Japanese nationals, which covers these other committee groups within the subcommittees in the investigation report. So will that be enough for Japan to get progress on some of these other issues? Abe himself just yesterday emphasized again, as they got ready to send this group over to Pyongyang, that we will keep priority on the abduction issue. So Japan is hammering that point home, but to what extent does this, and this is a question I have for Nishino-sensei, to what extent would Tokyo, what are the pros and cons from Tokyo's perspective of kind of keeping this going along? Maybe they don't get much satisfaction early on in this process on the abduction issue, but North Korea starts talking about some of the wives, maybe they can come home, or information about remains from left over from the war. What are some of the pros and cons and calculations in Tokyo about how to approach that and how far to go along?
Thank you. A good and difficult question. I don't know Abe's mind on this issue, but at the very first moment, I've thought that Prime Minister Abe obviously tried to utilize abduction issue to reboost his popularity. But when I saw the Abe's decision on Monday, so he decided to dispatch our officials to Pyongyang to hear from the current situation of the reinvestigation. Now I have a kind of sense that Abe may really try to really tackle this issue to make progress or achieve his political goal. But as I said in my opening remarks, there's a growing concern or frustration about North Korea's attitude towards the abduction issue. So we expected that North Korea submit a report on the whereabouts and the fate of the Japanese abductee. 12 Japanese abductees, our government officially admitted. But now, according to some North Korean officials, including Ambassador Song Il-ho, now North Korea is trying to North Korea is reinvestigating all Japanese nationals simultaneously. I mean, not only abduction issue, but also other three issues. Especially at this moment, South Korea, at this point, North Korea government try to handle the last part, I mean, fourth part, the remains of Japanese who died around World War II. So this means Japanese government cannot escape from the dialogue with North because other issues such as Japanese wives and remains of Japanese are also important for Japan. But for Prime Minister Abe, as you know, abduction issue is most important. But he cannot escape from other issues. If North Korea try to be on the table at other issues. So we know the North Korea's intention to diversify the issues. Then families of abductees strongly opposed government official dispatchment at this point. But according to some opinion polls, still many Japanese support this Abe's initiative in dealing with reopening dialogue with the North.
Now, what if I flip that question around a little bit? Based on your visit to Pyongyang a couple weeks ago, you met with their chief negotiator. Do you have a sense if Abe decides, okay, I'm willing to keep going on some of these parallel tracks because I have enough confidence that I might get what I really want on the abduction issue, so we'll keep going. But in that process, they don't necessarily loosen any more sanctions. So they just keep the current loosening of travel restrictions and remittances, et cetera. What about from the North Korean side? Is there a point at which they're going to say, look, we've been giving you the information that we said we were going to give you. We expect more, or we're going to stop this process. Do you think that's possible, or what kinds of things are they looking for in addition going forward? And this gets a little bit at this motivation question too, in terms of what they're really after.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, I visited Pyongyang, and I had an opportunity to meet and talk with Ambassador Song Il-ho, who is in charge of normalization talk with Japan. He said to us, our delegation, that look, we are doing well. He mentioned that the economic situation in Pyongyang. So economic situation in Pyongyang is getting better and better. Even if Japan and other countries impose sanctions on North Korea. So without Japanese economic assistance, we are doing well. So he showed a kind of confidence. And he emphasized that so-called dual policy line between the economic revitalization and the nuclear program. Yes, he wants Japanese economic assistance, especially now North Korea is trying to launch many economic special zones. Last year, 13, this year, 6. North Korea launched economic special economic zone. So they want foreign investment, especially from Japan and Russia and China. But at the same time, as I slightly mentioned in my remarks, now they have a kind of sense that they may reopen the dialogue with South and then the United States. Yesterday, North Korea released one of detained U.S. citizen. So now North Korea is trying to reopen not only Japan but also other diplomatic relations. I mean, South Korea and the United States, and always North Korea's final destination is the same: United States. Improvement of the relationship with the United States is the final goal for the North Korea. So if so, from my point of view, at this point, North Korea may take a lead in the dialogue between Japan and North Korea. I'm not sure.
Scott, do you have any thoughts on that before I jump to one more
question?
Yeah,
let me just make a couple of observations. I mean, I agree with Nishino-san that historically one of the challenges has been that DPRK seems to have regarded their interaction with Japan in part as a tactical piece of a puzzle that is focused on the broader challenge of relations, maybe with the U.S., or at least that what we've seen is that in DPRK diplomacy is they don't have the bandwidth to do more than one thing at once. And so, they'll work on one relationship for a while and then for whatever reason might switch to another relationship. So I think that what we have not yet seen is a coordinated North Korean strategy where it's multi-track. And yet right now they're getting a lot busier. And so it's very interesting, I think, as a question whether or not they can formulate strategic objectives related to the respective relationships and actually focus to the end on trying to achieve them, or which might be the broader expectation, or whether reality is going to intrude in terms of how much is it really possible to get in each of these specific channels in the current environment where they still haven't addressed the core issue with the international community of denuclearization.
Right. I still have an impression that North Korea is going to underestimate what Japan requires to be able to move forward. And what I can't decide yet, and I'll leave it there for now. But I can't decide how long the Abe cabinet will wait. If they'll see it worthwhile enough just to keep going, the sanctions that they've relaxed are really not particularly significant, I don't think, at this point. It has allowed a new relationship or a revived relationship between the Chosen Soren Korean Residents Association in Japan, essentially North Korea's representation in Japan, to now travel back and forth to Pyongyang. And you saw the chairman of that association go to Pyongyang for a whole month-long visit. He hadn't been there in 8 years. So they've kind of revived that, but we'll see whether this percolates or not. But I want to jump a little bit now to the policy coordination issue, because yesterday we had an event here at Carnegie featuring Bob Gallucci and Victor Cha and Sid Seiler, who's now at the State Department and involved in policy vis-a-vis North Korea. And Seiler talked about 3 pillars of the U.S.-North Korea strategy: diplomacy, pressure, and deterrence. And noting that the door is still always open and diplomacy is still an active part of the United States policy. But I wonder to what extent this Japan-North Korea initiative, and then maybe to some extent North-South renewed discussions, begins to undermine this the pressure pillar. That it does, viewed from Washington, is this a problem in the sense of we're not going to be able to keep up the kind of pressure that we want to keep up as part of our policy. I will add that another thing that Sid Seiler talked about was that he also has a probe, prod, and prove strategy with North Korea as part of their diplomatic track. So I guess they like things in threes. And it's you could argue that this is a useful aspect of probing and trying to prove. So I don't know whether to think this is a real asset and a positive development from Washington's perspective, or is it potentially undermining? So maybe, Scott, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think that there's a certain air of skepticism and in terms of mood and an overall tone of discouragement toward this kind of thing with North Korea at this stage. And I think that's probably consistent with, the logical conclusion of Sid's framework that you laid out. On the diplomatic side, honestly, when I first heard his probe, prod, and prove, I thought he sounded more like a proctologist than a diplomat. And I'm not sure that the North Koreans are going to appreciate that sort of being on the receiving end of that sort of examination. But now just today, I think that we have to really explore what the significance is of this statement from the North Koreans, that they released an individual based on the quote-unquote repeated request from President Obama. The White House must be very pleased that there's somebody out there that's recognizing and showing respect to President Obama's wishes.
Right. Apparently NAG is another part of our strategy.
Yeah. But then, the other 2 are there, and they are impediments, I think, to kind of moving forward on other issues in the U.S.-DPRK relationship. But because of that, I think that actually the body language that both Tokyo and Seoul have been receiving has been kind of hold tight, stay in formation, don't reach out too far. That's what I see. Mm-hmm. How do you feel?
Nishino Sensei, viewed from Tokyo, do you sense that the Abe cabinet feels criticized or under the watchful eye of Washington on this issue, or do they feel supported from Washington because the public statements have been generally supportive, I think, or understanding.
So as to three pillars, Mr. Saira said yesterday, actually, when we held a summit meeting between Koizumi and Kim Jong-il in 2002 and 2004, at that time, Koizumi government stated that deterrence and dialogue. So after 1998 Tepodon launch, we Japanese government decided to enhance our deterrence by making a decision to conduct a joint research on missile defense with the United States and to introduce information gathering satellite. So by doing so, we took a strong position toward North Korea. Then, at that time, North Korea had a very difficulties in the midst of Iraq and the Afghan war. So, under these conditions, we achieved our diplomatic goal. That summit meeting with North Korea. But first, Abe government, it always emphasized pressure. And we imposed our unilateral sanction on North Korea. But now we realize that our unilateral sanction, or maybe UN sanction, has not worked well. I realized when I visited Pyongyang 2 weeks ago. Pyongyang is getting better and better, even if we still impose sanctions on North Korea. Then now Prime Minister Abe is saying that we need dialogue to make progress on the abduction issue. Actually, this is a great change for me. Prime Minister Abe himself saying so. So 10 years ago, he didn't make this kind of statement. But now he emphasized we Japanese government need a dialogue with North. And I'm not familiar with Washington's intention or motivation in North Korea's policy at this moment. But so this week, we had many events on 20th anniversary of Geneva Agreement, agreed framework. In my sense, there is a kind of consensus in this town, bipartisan consensus in this town that so-called strategic patience has not worked well. Then we need a kind of a new type of approach, but still we yet to have an answer. So this is a current situation in Washington from my perspective. Then now Japanese government and maybe South Korean government reopen or continue the dialogue with the North. I think United States will support our effort to make a progress in the relationship with the North. But obviously, I know that North Korean nuclear program is the highest priority in this town.
Thank you. I think, just to add my 2 cents, I think what's really important is open-minded policy coordination. And I can't emphasize that enough, because we're going to end up with some very difficult decisions as this unfolds. And I think we have to have some flexibility vis-a-vis how our other partners interact with North Korea. I think there sometimes are opportunities there. The Japan-North Korea initiative was preceded by a whole series of confidence-building measures, including the meeting between one of the abductee victims' families, the Yokota family traveled to Mongolia to meet with their North Korean granddaughter, essentially, which was a concession by the North, which had always said they could only meet in North Korea, and that was it. And so they set that up along with a range of other things. So this idea of going through a process of creating some level of confidence and quid pro quo and deepening engagement in certain areas where it's possible can actually, I think, prove quite beneficial in the long run, and gives us more options and gives us more insight into what's going on in North Korea. At the same time, the nuclear issue is still out there. Sanctions are not necessarily completely effective. This idea of pressure has its limits, and we heard even yesterday in the discussion, Victor Cha talked about, well, maybe, one issue that the United States might need to consider is to push for even tougher sanctions, similar to sanctions related to the Iran program or things that get into the financial realm. So it's one thing to allow your allies and partners to pursue their important political issues with North Korea. But then at the same time, can you also ask them to sign up to even tougher sanctions, and what kind of consensus will you be able to build at that point? So that kind of open-minded policy coordination, I think, is going to be increasingly important. But I've talked enough up here for now. Let me open it up to the floor, and if there are questions you'd like to ask Professor Nishino or Scott or all of us, simply raise your hand. We'll have a microphone come to you, and let us know your name and affiliation, and we'll take your questions. Sir.
Norman.
Yep.
I'm Norman Newrider from the American Association for the Advancement of Science, AAAS. Nishino-san, what do you think will come if the North Koreans come and tell Abe what he wants? What will that be? Will they? What do you think they will be? Will it be? Maybe you certainly heard something from the people who did come back, but if you were to guess what the package will be if they tell the truth, what do you think it is? Or maybe they're just bluffing. Maybe they really don't have anything, but they're using this as a way to I don't know, get more from Japan. I guess one more part to that. The people who did come back, I'm sure they've been interrogated completely. And have they given, if you've talked to them or dealt with them or know what they said, do they know more than has been public about what has happened to other people?
Thank you for your question. Abduction issue is really difficult to resolve, not only for Abe but for all Japanese nationals and the government. I think so Jim said North Korea do not understand or know about Japanese atmosphere, but in my sense, maybe some core negotiators, such as Son Il-ho. Son Il-ho is actually not, I would say, not core negotiator, but Son Il-ho knows Japanese situation very well. So he said to us, now there is a growing kind of cons in Japan about dialogue between Japan and North Korea. But at the same time, he said to us, North Korean side always pursue to reopen or establish the diplomatic relationship with Japan in accordance with Pyongyang Declaration in 2002. This is very important, not only for North Korea but also for Japan. In accordance with Pyongyang Declaration in 2002 between Koizumi and Kim Jong-il, we decided to resolve all the problems, including abduction, not only abduction but also past issue and economic assistance after the normalization. So North Korea really, I think North Korea really want make a good relationship with Japan finally, but at this point, still North Korea wants to make a breakthrough to improve not only improve external relations, not only Japan but also other countries, so as to abduction resolution of abduction issue, my hunch is that North Korea know it's impossible to satisfy Japanese nationals on this matter, but they may do their best by conducting the investigation. But maybe Prime Minister, not the North Korean side, but the Japanese side, Japanese government have to decide what is the definition. What is the resolution of abduction issue? To what extent or to what degree we can achieve on this issue?
Do you think it's possible the North Koreans don't know either?
Don't know either what?
No, don't know themselves what happened to these people.
You mean the abduction issue?
Yeah. No, what happened? What Japan wants to know is
Do we
what
need-
happened to these people. They would like to get the people back, of course, if they're alive. They would like to know what happened. They would like to know what happened to them. They'd like to know if they died on the way. But I don't know. Maybe some don't know. Maybe the North Koreans don't know enough.
I think so.
But you're suggesting
yeah.
that Japan won't be satisfied with what they hear. So what does Japan want that will satisfy them?
My personal thought is that North Korea does not know everything. Do not know everything. But many Japanese think that North Korea always tell a lie on this issue. So this is a serious kind of perception gap.
Because they did send false bones last time, didn't they?
Right, and part of the problem here, I think, is there is an assumption, at least I think among some in Japan and in the United States, that a large number of the remaining questions about the abductees that haven't been solved yet were deeply involved in intelligence issues and reconnaissance and other kinds of classified issues in North Korea. So to actually tell all the truth about them is to give a large amount of information that they don't want to do. So then the question is, how do they provide enough to be credible? You know, we may end up in a situation similar when Libya was giving us information about its WMD programs back when Gaddafi made that decision. Some of it is a gut feeling. I think when I talked to the State Department guys who were going over there to get the initial information, they could just feel that their counterparts had been told, had been ordered, give them everything, give them what they need, satisfy the Americans or the international community on this point, which was a very different experience than they had with Iraq during that whole process, et cetera. So it was almost a gut feel in terms of, are you getting, are they really trying or not? I don't know. Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Thank you. Amanda Conklin from the U.S. China Policy Foundation. You mentioned that China was kind of a motivating factor in North Korea pursuing diversifying its relationships. But how is China reacting to this new engagement with Japan? And in the future, how will China impact policy coordination?
Thank you. So according to the as to the relationship between China and North Korea, so generally speaking, after the third nuclear test and execution of Chanson-Tech, China really is taking a strong position toward North Korea, and now China is trying to establish a cooperative relationship with South Korea in dealing with North Korea. So this is a general observation. On the other hand, from North Korea's perspective, dependency on China is really dangerous, especially in terms of economic aspect. Then North Korea is really enthusiastically trying to diversify its economic relations. I think now relationship between China is North Korea is soured, but in my sense, basic Chinese policy toward North Korea has yet to change. China tried to keep North Korea kind of as a buffer zone, and China will never abandon North Korea. So under this assumption, North Korea can take action to diversify its economic relations because China never abandoned North Korea. This is my observation. How about Scott?
Yeah. Well, just a couple of things. There's not that much there, but I do think that to the extent that North Korea may have decided to diversify and engage with Japan as a result of their dissatisfaction with the relationship with China, that's kind of interesting because it means that Abe is opportunistically taking advantage of a situation that was actually indirectly created by China doing something that we'd like to see. It's not a bad thing. It's just it has an element of opportunistic, opportunity to it. I think the second way that this plays in is the timing of the meeting in July coincided with the Chinese Xi Jinping's visit to South Korea. And I think that at that time there was a little bit of concern that somehow maybe Japan or North Korea were trying to use this as a card or expression that was targeted at influencing China ROK or discussions somehow. Hard to say whether there's really anything there to show either motive or success in terms of effect. And then the third broader observation that I would make that I think it's always important to keep in mind is that when we think about the future of the peninsula, it, I think, is just a geopolitical reality that both China and Japan see the orientation of the peninsula as central to their own respective security, and that those visions are diametrically opposed with each other. And so longer term, that is actually one of the most difficult issues that I think will have to be managed in the event that there's any kind of strategic shifts in weight associated with unification on the peninsula.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on the long term there, definitely. Although in the short term, you could say, to the extent that North Korea improves relationship with Japan, that could at least reduce some of the pressure that China feels vis-a-vis the nuclear issue, et cetera, and also helps promote economic development. And it's not all bad from a China perspective, but long term, I agree. I have here and then here. We'll take these two gentlemen.
My name is Tatsuya Mizumoto from Juju Press, Japanese Wire Service. Thank you very much for today's opportunity. I want to ask Nishino Sensei. You said, so you talked to the Ambassador Son Ilfo in Pyongyang. Just I want to listen to your sense about him. Does he understand Japanese government the policy to DPRK, which is even if DPRK is going to return 12 Japanese abductees, if they cannot resolve their nuclear issue, Japan cannot normalize diplomatic relation with them. Does he understand that? So what is your sense?
May I?
Yeah, please. And
yes.
then we'll go take that.
Yes, thank you for your question. I think that Ambassador Son definitely understands the Japanese position. Yes, he is a chief negotiator of normalization talk with Japan, but so he just deliver. He has not a kind of mandate to reach a compromise with Japan. He just deliver the order from the top of the North Korea. So this is important to see North Korean negotiator. But not only ambassadors, but also all of North Korean policy makers, which in charge of Japan affairs, always say that in accordance with Pyongyang Declaration in 2002, both sides try to reach or open diplomatic relations. If you see Pyongyang Declaration, yes, Japan can give economic assistance to North Korea after open our diplomatic relation. North Korea really understand this point, but in the process of negotiation to establish diplomatic relation, so we could give some economic assistance or something from a humanitarian perspective or not. And as I said earlier, from North Korea's perspective, negotiation with Japan is a kind of entrance to reach other external relationships, such as the United States and South Korea. So in this context, North Korea always utilize negotiation with Japan. But when I talk with Ambassador Song, I had a kind of feeling that if Japanese government really have a strong resolution to resolve all of outstanding issue with the North, then North Korean side always also tackle outstanding issue with Japan. So this is my feeling.
Sure, we have one more question here.
Thank you very much. My name is Pavicevic. I'm Minister Counsel with the Embassy of Serbia here, newcomer in Washington. I lived in Tokyo from 1993 to 1998, so let's say that I know the basic. My question is following for Nishino-san and for Mr. Snyder. If they would be kind to comment shortly about Russian position from now on, how that we can understand, because they are integral part of negotiation in varieties, and they have their interests, and that might be positive.
Thank you. The Russian dimension.
Okay, well, I think that Russia is definitely part of North Korea's diversification strategy. In fact, during the course of the last 6 months, I think we've seen a notable step up in terms of progress on economic issues, use of the ruble as part of exchange, settling of past debts, the Russians continue to maintain their interest in developing the Najin port. And so there's an economic component to it. Russia has also held firm, I think, on position regarding the importance of denuclearization. But it's also possible that North Korea could come to be seen as an opportunity to play a spoiler role in the context of the seeming fragmentation within this broader six-party framework. And so that, I think, is a matter for concern because, given the overall state of U.S.-Russia relations, it's hard to imagine that there's going to be a very effective coordination in specific terms on how to deal with North Korea.
Yeah, I totally agree with Scott's comment. So for North Korea, Russia is a very important piece or nation to reboost its economy. So as Scott mentioned, NASON economic zone. In NASON economic zone, Russia is now playing a very important role to reboosting South Korea's economy.
And I guess I would only add, because there's a Japan-Russia connection here as well, which is part of what Nishino-sensei was talking about Abe's strategy of expanding Japan's role in regional diplomacy, trying to improve the relationship with Russia that has been stymied to some extent by the situation in the Ukraine and the annexation of Crimea by Russia. That hopefully there should be an opportunity to isolate some of these problems from each other, and sometimes the United States tends to lump everything together. So now Russia is doing very terrible things in the Ukraine and not very helpful in a variety of other areas. But can we cooperate with Japan, with the rest of the G7 in a way to try to impact that policy that we don't agree with and we're trying to seek resolution of, but still allow a Japan-Russian negotiation to move forward on issues that are separate from that they have. This is similar to the North Korean situation, in my view. We cannot lose sight of the nuclear problem, the nuclear issue in North Korea, but that should not mean that all contact, all other types of diplomatic initiatives and resolutions to address different particular bilateral situations is off the table. There needs to be a way to accommodate that. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to try to foster this discussion today, to get into a little bit more depth and understanding about the views from Japan and the United States on these issues. So to that extent, I think we've been pretty successful. Thanks to Nishino-sensei for coming all the way here to talk to us about it, and to Scott for adding your voice and insights to this. And my thanks to all of you for joining us today, and look forward to seeing you again at a future event. Thank you very much. Thank you.